Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Black and Bright, A Big Life. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on unceded sovereign lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd also like to acknowledge the Bunurong people and all other members of the Eastern Kulin Nation. Getting into the panel this afternoon, I'd love to introduce Lenora Thacker for her yarn bomb. Lenora is a Mobiaglag Meriyam woman born and raised on Yidinji and Yiraganji country in far north Queensland. I hope I said that right, Lenora. Her passion has been documenting her family's history over many years, working with elders to help bring their stories to life in DVD and television documentaries, and working on her own fiction and non-fiction writing. Lenora believes that Zenatke's voices are too few and far between on the literary landscape, and that, to quote Toni Morrison, if you cannot find the book you want to read, you must write it. Please welcome Lenora.
Thank you, everyone. Ancestors are with me. So I want you to imagine it's 1938 and we are in a shanty town for Torres Strait Islanders and other coloured people. On the fringe of just another racist little town somewhere in North Queensland. So 16-year-old Pearl was caught by her brother with a Kole boy, that's a white boy, at a dance last night. And the brother has taught the Kole boy a lesson he won't forget. And this is the morning after. By them, quick! By them are coming. Balajoey raced into the house, bolted the door, and with eyes darting around the room, tried to figure out his next move. What the bloody hell? Daddy Barge roused from his brand new second-hand armchair. Lord's sake, Joey, what the police want you for? Mama Rose put down her cup of tea and jumped to her feet, preparing for battle. Ask her, Balajoey said, jabbing his finger in Pearl's face. All eyes were on her like a lynch mob. Only this time, it was family itching for a lynching. Not my fault you get bombed up and want to fight everybody, Pearl hit back at him, still feeling his fury from last night in her swollen cheekbone. F you, Guttawarra, Balajoey came at her, readying his backhand. Oi, oi, Daddy Barge stepped between them. I do the flogging round here. And what's your language? Said Mama Rose, making time for propriety. Granny winced. She couldn't abide a foul mouth either, especially on Sundays. Geez, Mama, black fella get bashed, no one gives a frig. White fella gets a small dustin' up, it starts raining coppers, pleaded Joey, like he was already on trial. The sudden rapping at the front door sent everyone scrambling, with Mama Rose bundling up the last pieces of damper into a tea towel and shoving it into Balajoey's hands. Here! Now, out the back, cross the creek, look for Uncle Charlie's humpy and stay put. The door rapped again, followed by a voice. Hello in there, Constable Jim Archer here. Would like a word with Joey Abel. Pearl's mind flashed up a vision of the Kole Jim Archer as a skinny postie riding his pushbike around town, losing everyone's mail and trying to humbug her as a young gal. Now in a copper's uniform, she held little hope he would do better as a lawman. Kazage boy, Granny motioned as she held the back door open after checking there was no Bizem there. Balajoey flew out the back. Pearl watched him go, barefoot and shirt lifting from behind, gliding like a flying fox, vanishing into the forest. Eso.
Thank you so much, Lenora, for that beautiful story. Very, very amazing way to introduce this event and to kickstart off this conversation. So thank you again so much. And say hello to Layla for me. My name is BB Backhouse. It's an absolute pleasure and honour to be able to moderate this conversation this afternoon in the presence of such amazing, wonderfully talented are brilliant storytellers who have so much impact through their words. I would at this time like to acknowledge Auntie Bev Murray, who was meant to be moderating this panel. Unfortunately, due to a last-minute change, she wasn't able to join us, but I just want to acknowledge her as well for the fact that I am going to be utilising some of her notes and questions as well. As I mentioned, my name is Bibi Backhouse. I am a Bardi Jawi descendant from the northwest of Western Australia in the Kimberley region. My people are saltwater people, and it was a really fantastic experience to be able to see Edie Wright on stage a little earlier as well, to see one of my people up here and feel a little closer to home, I suppose, and a great reminder as well. To my left, this panel is wonderful. I'm going to just introduce them by name, and I'm not going to introduce any further than that. I'm going to let them tell their stories. So we've got Ani Ronnie Gorry, we've got Adam Lees, and we've got Auntie Patty Lees as well. We're hoping to learn a bit more about your life stories, and you've both published, or the three of you have published really incredible books which have made waves since publication. They've really cemented their positions within the black and non-black communities around Australia. Annie Patty Lees and Adam Lees, your book, A Question of Colour. And of course, Annie Ronnie, your book, Black and Blue, which, as if you don't know, where have you been, but just won the Victorian Premier's Literary Award. Both remarkable accounts and recounts of life stories, of lessons and experiences that we'll dig a bit deeper into. Annie Patty, would you like to introduce yourself?
I defer to my son Adam, he's the spokesperson. So, yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone. Mum's a little nervous, so if you could encourage her, that would be really great. So I'm Adam Lees, I'm Paddy's eldest son, child number 3. Culturally, our connections, we're Torres Strait Islanders, so of the Midiam people, the Mugaram clan, from Murray Island in the eastern Torres Strait. We're also Aboriginal from the Atacama people of eastern Cape York. We also have Irish, English and Filipino ancestry. The Filipino connection comes from the pearl diving days in the Torres Strait. So some of you would know our family. Mum's maiden and my grandmother was a Blanco, and our family are Janki as well. So many of you would know John Paul, who opened the festival here, as well as my very famous cousin Terry Janki. So.
Thank you. Annie Ronnie.
Woman Jindi Nectar Makta Ronnie Gorry. I'm a Gunai Kurnai woman. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm lucky enough to live and work on my country, which is 2.5 hours east of Melbourne in Gippsland. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Welcome to the three of you. As I mentioned, it's an absolute honour and privilege to be able to host this panel this afternoon here on Wurundjeri country. Annie Ronnie, I might ask this first question to you. Your book, Black and Blue, is bold and powerful and telling in its stories and your life experiences and your experiences within the police force specifically and the racism and segregation you encountered there. What was your life like before you joined the police force? What are how do you describe your life and how do you recount it and remember it?
So prior to policing, I was a young Aboriginal girl who had witnessed so much police brutality within my family and my community. I witnessed a lot of excessive force used by police towards my family and my community. I was, as a young child, and it's, it's unfortunate that I've seen all that, a lot of trauma in my life, but I think a lot of people will resonate with what I write and what I've said in my book. The difference between me and them is that I've written about it. But it's, it's unfortunate, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to become a police officer, yeah.
You just mentioned that it was an unfortunate thing. What do you think, do you think that there is a difference between an unfortunate life experience and a fortunate one in terms of storytelling, and if that there is a difference. What is that to you?
Well, the difference is colour. Okay, so police will racially profile you. If you're black and brown, you will get pulled over. You'll be stopped in your daily travels and you'll be intercepted. You'll be searched. And if you're lucky, you'll be strip searched. And they'll justify as to why they're doing this. So the difference is colour. So if you're non-Indigenous, if you're white, you have a good day and you be off, and you can drive your fancy cars. And you know, if you're a black fella driving a fancy car, you shouldn't be. God forbid a black fella should own a flash vehicle. You will get pulled over. But unfortunately, as a young child, I witnessed racially profiling by police, even as a young child, and I grew up to fear police. And it's not just me. I think, and I won't speak for everyone. I speak just for myself and my family. But we were terrified of police and welfare, and my ancestors prior to me had that same fear. And so what I was trying to do by joining the police was eradicating that fear with my children and my grandchildren and them thereafter. But not only, soon after joining the police, I realised that these fears were well and truly justified.
When you think back to when you were younger, when you were a child, and those encounters with racial profiling, with police, etc., do you remember how that made you feel? Did you understand what was going on at that time?
Yeah, I knew very well. We knew. Like, I've got battle scars all over my body from running from cops all my life. So, which probably made me, if there is a definition of a good cop, like whatever, I was probably it, because I knew where I would be hiding, because that was where I would run and hide. And I've got scars all over my legs from running from cops, and rightly so. I mean, and for all those ones that are running today from cops, keep fucking running, because have that fear, because and also whilst we're talking about this, like, I have real deep concerns, a real concern that when I leave the house, or any members of my family leave their house, they will be the next death in custody.
It's a really awful thing to think and feel every time you leave the confines of your home. Your home is your sanctuary and your safety, and the fact that you do not feel that the second you walk out of the door, based on the colour of your skin.
It's not just Aboriginal people, it's people of colour. If you're different to them, okay, so when I say them, it's predominantly a white male dominated institution, a very racist institution of policing I'm talking about. So if you're different to them, so if you come from the LGBTQI plus community, if you look different to them, you will be targeted. Yeah.
It really is such a travesty, and it's one of the biggest issues, I think, in this country and other countries around the world. But for relevance and context, this country, you're absolutely right, Auntie Ronnie, that it's at the helm of it is white patriarchy, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Can you talk us through the process of what the moment when you thought to yourself, these memories, these experiences, these things that I've endured and been through, I'm going to turn them into a book. I'm going to write about them.
Yeah, so towards the end of my policing one time, I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety and depression, and I had trauma amnesia, and I still suffer from that today. Probably a good thing, because I'm hoping for anyone out there that has read my book, it's a hard read, but I'm hoping, like if I've written that and they're my memories, God knows what I don't remember, right? But what was the question again? I forgot. I just rambled.
The experience of writing your book and the moment that you realised.
Yeah, so initially it wasn't a book, but it was like, when I wrote so much, I realised that I had enough memories and there was enough for a book. But I didn't write it for a book. I wrote it for my children and for my grandchildren and the generations after me. I didn't want them to have to go through the very racist archives that are held by the state government to find out about my life or their grandfather or my grandparents. The way I had to dig, and my brother and I had to dig deep into the archives, and were very traumatised by the racist language that was used by the settlers, who, you know, stole the children off the missions, and first they put them on the missions, then they took them off the missions, you know, and then they took them away, stole them, you know. We were just treated like cattle was treated better than us mob, you know what I mean? And yeah, so I didn't want my ancestors after me to have to do that. I didn't want, yeah.
It changes the delivery and the context of it, and it makes it a lot more of an intimate journey and a personal one for you, because in the context of writing, authors will ask themselves, who am I writing this for? And when your audience, in your case, was your children and your immediate family, it amplifies the significance of your story and that journey and makes it a really deeply personal one. Throughout the process and that journey of writing and reliving those experiences and those memories, did that have an impact on you?
Yeah, sometimes, because I've been doing like a lot of book stuff and talking about stuff that's quite triggering for me. So like I'll go home after today, like today's my last event. So I'll go home and I probably won't speak to anyone for like 3 or 4 days. Yeah, because it takes a lot out of me. Yeah, that's, and it's like that every day. It's like this book that I wrote, it's like, this is the fight as Aboriginal people we have every day. Every day we're walking around with our guard up and worrying about drungais and, you know, welfare, taking our kids away and stuff like that, you know? Yeah.
Was it a therapeutic journey for you?
No, not at all.
Do you find some sense of relief in the fact that, right, I'm this story that has, well, this collection of stories, this life experience that I've had has had such a detrimental impact on me, the fact that it is now in print, do you sometimes think to yourself, well, I'll never have to talk about this again? Or do you find some form of solace in sharing more verbally?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm grateful that I was able to get my book published, my story published. And it's not just my story, it's my children, it's my family's story as well. But it's our stories, blackfellas stories that need to be told right now. Especially in Victoria, we're going through a treaty process with truth-telling, and this is my truth. But, you know, we need people to hear our stories. With Aboriginal people, like we're the oldest storytellers in this world. We've been telling stories for tens of thousands of years. We're the best and the first and the best storytellers. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that one. Were there any particular issues for you that may have, during the, you know, the moments and the time of putting your fingers to the keyboard or putting a pen to a paper, was there anything that made it hard for you or more difficult to write and tell the stories?
Yeah, there's, I don't want to bring it up, but I don't want any spoilers. I want people to buy my book, you know, but yeah, there's some parts there, like I will never be able to speak of again, but that, you know, in the sense of like cathartic, I was like, I wrote it down and it was out of here, but I won't be able to speak about, so... Yeah.
With the recent awards that your book has received, there's almost a bit of a conflict or a juxtaposition, right, in terms of the source of your stories and where they come from, in terms of, you know, your voice as a First Nations woman, but also from the racism and injustices that you have experienced, then to be receiving an award, for example, the Victorian Premier's Literary Award, from what we could refer to as the institution or, you know, the colony. What value do you personally see in awards like that behind your work?
Yeah, well, firstly, I had no idea you could win awards when you wrote books. I had no idea. None. But I was shocked to win. But also with Danny Pearson, you know, the member for Parliament, he hasn't read my book. Like, I was like, but he probably has now, I'm not sure. Like, he did the opening night as well, and in his address he mentioned my name as well. So I'm like, but the night he awarded me with that award, I asked him, "Have you read my book?" And he said, "No." Why not? Why not? Our stories are important, and they should be shared, and people should be reading it.
Absolutely. Was there anything that you learnt about yourself during the writing process?
Probably that I'm a little black, angry woman, and I'll probably carry this anger for the rest of my life. I'm angry. I'm a nice person, but I'm just pissed off. Yeah, I'm just really upset and angry about all the atrocities that my people have gone through, but also happy that that we're still here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the anger and the residue of your experiences is definitely something you carry with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But I think personally, when it comes to addressing a trauma or an experience, there is a resolution that comes with that also. And it's how we present and carry ourselves moving forward, knowing that we walk forward with those feelings and those emotions too.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the awards because usually in previous years and whatnot, but usually fiction wins a lot of the awards, right, Melanie? Right, yeah. So it was really deadly that a non-fiction won it, and I believe I was the first black person or Aboriginal person to win it in 37 years, and a non-fiction at that. And that's so deadly, and it's like as writers, and we've only Paddy and Adam here with their story as well, which is also non-fiction. It's our stories, it's our life that we're speaking about, we're putting it out there. We're not a myth. Our stories aren't made up. We're not a fantasy. We're not an imagination. Our stories are real. And you couldn't even, the stuff that we write about, the stuff that we have endured in our lifetime, you couldn't even fucking script it. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't even make this shit up. And then when people read our books, they'll go, how the fuck have they gone, how do they go, through their day-to-day and they've gone through all that. But that's how staunch we are as black people and resilient. And we're still here,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think to follow on from that really powerful statement you've just made, the fact that it's that you were the first Aboriginal person to win that particular award in, 37 years? With your true account, and at that, a true account that calls out and challenges the white structure and system of policing is a huge achievement that absolutely is being celebrated, and so it should. And hopefully it is the beginning of a repetitive sequence of that into the future, where we will see more Aboriginal truth being told, being received, being acknowledged, and potentially winning more awards for their power and their impact across communities. So thank you, Ani Ronnie.
Thank you.
Ani Paddy, you've written a really beautiful memoir, A Question of Colour, and this tells your story about being stolen when you were 10 years old, is that right?
That's right.
And I'm not going to tell the story, it's yours, but it's as a bit of a summary or an interlude, a prelude, that you were 10 years old when you were taken with your siblings, and at that point in time, you thought that you were destined for Africa.
Yeah, because the history books of this country there's nothing about our own stories, and we learned in school about the black continent, which was Africa, so to be plunged into an environment where the dominant people were Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander was very foreign to us, or to me. And when we were shipped off to Palm Island, after a couple of years in the orphanage in Townsville, surrounded by all these black-skinned people, and that the only connotation I could draw from it was the fact that we were going to Africa or somewhere. I knew we were going somewhere, but and my younger brother at the time, rest in peace, he's since passed, he was very frightened by the experience, and I was trying to always have that positive outlook to say we're going to be okay, which was really, at the time, yeah, was a understatement. in terms of what happened to us whilst we were in the care of the government's care, separate to our mother's care. So the book documents that story, and similar to Veronica's story, the genesis for it all was the fact of leaving a legacy for my children to understand this angry old woman, or the person that I've turned into be, always challenging some of their concepts and that, and then we had to dig deeper, and with the assistance of my eldest son here, Adam, the book came to fruition, because I kept, it was very painful to have to resurrect those feelings, and he persevered with me, because it wasn't a very easy journey, because I was being asked to go down corridors of my life that I'd wanted to be kept secret. And I think that's part of the older generation, which I'm now part of. I was that young person that started off there probably a long time ago. The book didn't just happen over a 2-year period. I've carried the story with me, and I'm grateful to Adam for letting me release that. You don't realise the agony of what you carry inside you until you actually give the opportunity to have those revelations and that, and put it out. And there's a lot of trauma and things, but I think it was necessary for me to be healed, because, and I hope the book in some way will help this nation to heal. It's a very truth-telling about the policies of government that separate us, and why the journey to reconciliation is so difficult, because we come from different pathways in our lives, and we need to stand up and talk about it, be strong, and carry that generosity. I think that when I heard yesterday in some of the conversations about this gift that we're giving to people, and I want people to respect it. It's not something fearful or something, it's something for their education, to create an awareness, and we need those stories to be told. And I hope the book, there's so many factors of why we write stories, because you read about the life of a book. The book speaks through generations, where people have gone to revolutions. They burnt books, they tried to do away with the written word and things like that. So it does matter, and it does go into people's consciousness, and they carry that truth with them always. And it's a gift that I've given to my children and my other children, and it's also a gift I've given to my ancestors, because the thing I ask about myself when I set out on any journey, not whether I'm writing a book or something, is to say, how do I want to be remembered as an ancestor? Did I do my bit to improve the lot of not just my mob, but my family, but my community? And I've gone out to give a life of service to them. And we're not all under this one blanket. We all think alike, feel alike. Sometimes I'm challenged by this younger generation and their activism and how they go about it, because they've got a different vehicle to what we had. You know, we didn't have internet or that information sharing stuff, and so we just made it up as we went along and gathered and protested. And as I said, coming here, as I said, I signed up for this assignment by my son, unknowing that I'd actually signed the deal with the Jane, and so here I am.
We're going to Melbourne.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, so you know, so he's got that authority, but sometimes he misuses, he abuses it. Actually. So anyway,
I was waiting for that. I was saying to my nephew, she's going to hang shit on me at some point during the session. That's and we've had that throughout this whole process.
Yeah.
So I can jump in. I guess I gave, I think on reflection, Mum is always, it's not my story. So I've been very deliberate in standing back and like extracting myself from the story. And it's actually great that it's in Mum's voice, because I've been invited to do readings, and it's like I can't, because it's in Mum's voice. So unless I do Mrs. Doubtfire and put Mum's voice on, I'm not going to be able to read. But I think, the question that you asked Annie Ronnie about, I guess it came to me. So how the book came to be is Mum throughout her whole life has told us this story. We grew up with it. And the trauma isn't so much ours as it is Mum's. There is the transgenerational element. But she's always said she wanted to write this book. And she's 74 and she's still working full time, in addition to being on, like a lot of people, on boards and committees. And I knew that the book would never come if she had to do it. So I guess, I worked in Africa for 6 years, and my last job was on a gold mine site in Tanzania, and I ended up losing my job under pretty, traumatic and very difficult circumstances. And I found myself coming back to Australia at short notice. At that time, the gold price had dropped. I knew I'd be out of work for a long time, and I had a couple of options. I thought I could go travelling, or I could do something, really constructive and start the bones of this book. And so in doing so, I guess I was a little bit naive around the trauma that it would dig up. I thought I was doing something great. And I think the question that you asked Arnie Ronnie was it therapeutic? I thought it would have been, but I soon came to realise that it wasn't. It was really like opening a Pandora's box that I felt sometimes none of us were equipped to deal with all the anger and the moods and the history and the memories that came forward. It was sometimes, like with Mum, there were stories I'd never heard from all the aunties that she had grown up on Palm Island with, who have again since passed. And so we kind of blindly went into that, and it was like learning the lessons along the way. But it was a very difficult process, and I think the approach I took was hearing all the stories. I interviewed a lot of people, and again, most of them have passed, so I'm glad that we did that. But a lot of the pain and the trauma that they sort of had, went into that book as well. And so some of it is hard to read. And so for me, the character I channeled was like that Juliette Binoche in that movie Chocolat, where she puts all the feelings into her ingredients. And I think that was the approach I took. Because if I took all that on through Mum's story, it would have been quite hard for me to carry. So I think that's why sometimes the book is quite heavy in moments, because it's a transference of that trauma in many ways. But overall, a really great thing to have done, I think.
Was there ever a point between the two of you that either or both had thought, just can't do this anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah. Many of those, when somebody asked, what do you take out of that experience? I said, never write a book with your son.
And then mine was never write a book with your mother. So we're like, touche. But then we realised we'd gone so far that it just was too hard to go back. And we knew it was a good thing. It was just hard at the time. For me, the hardest thing, one of the hardest things was when I'd got all of Mum's interviews and oral histories and stuff from the archives, and just made sure that the voice reflected, the experiences were reflective of what Mum had already put on record or put out there. And I did the manuscript in Word and sent it to Mum, for a squiz and for her to edit. But she didn't do the track changes thing in Microsoft Word, and then she apparently made 5 days worth of changes. And then so it's like, well, what did you edit? And she's like, well, it's just there. It's like she hadn't turned the whole thing on, so I had to sit there with the whole, my first full version, which is 300 and something pages, and then go through and see what Mum had edited. So there was that sort of just trying to honour her voice, but at the same time, just bring it down a little and make sure it was palatable and digestible. Yeah.
And was it that particular experience of comparing the two manuscripts where you thought, I just can't do this anymore?
No, I think it was dealing with the moods that I just didn't expect.
Yeah.
I thought it would have been a healing, cleansing thing, and there were lots of things that were dredged up. And I think, it's Mum's story, so I'm very mindful of that. We were very deliberate. There was, it wasn't a tell-all, but it's a very honest account. And I think there were only 3 things that we deliberately omitted from the book because it was for different reasons.
Yep.
And that was, kind of heavy to deal with. So just, bringing those things up from her past and the sort of the anger and the moods that came with it was a bit unexpected. But, we persevered, and that's the result.
Yeah, because you've been asked to revisit traumatic experiences, and Adam took it, he really put his heart into it, and I really appreciated that, and I wanted to live up to his expectation and the time he invested in me and that, but it was like a military thing. He'd get up in the morning at 6 o'clock and have his cup of coffee, have a shower, be sitting at the desk, and then he'd knock on the door and want me to come out. I'd been crying all night, and then I just wanted to go home. I said like that, and we'd have a little argy-bargy about it. Then I'd come back to the process. He said, Mum, you've got to do this, and I said, I ain't going to do anything. I said, I do something I don't want to do like that. But anyway, I'm glad he persevered, because, again, we talk about that gift and the stuff that's heart and soul's in there. And I was 19 years as the CEO of the Aboriginal Legal Service in Mount Isa. In the last 32 years, I've been with an organisation that deals with children after school care, the youth and the aged care, which I'm really invested in. And so I always say that we got them from the cradle to the grave with the little ones, where it starts with what's the future we're going to leave for them. And then the youth who are the high instances of suicide in community. And I'm so sick of hearing the thing of on the reports about they contributed to their own death. And it's really tragic because of the alcoholism, the drugs, and that's only a small part of the story. It's about the things, when we talk about deaths in custody and things like that, it's not what's happening when people die in custody, it's what's happening outside, the things that the Royal Commission identified, all the socio-economic issues, housing, poverty, employment, they all factor into that. So we've got to do the preventative stuff, and I've been in this space for, as I said, I can't even remember. And then you hear that, as I talk about it now when we gather to talk, and I say same shit, different plies. It's the same, the remedies aren't there, the reports, the recommendations. It's about the implementation, holding governments accountable. So our voices are in there, but now little books, not little books, I think big books like this will change that, but also change the despair that's in our community, the hope that's not there. And I've got another saying, I say, despair is cured by hope, not dope. And our people are using alcohol and drugs to numb the awful existence that they're going through. And we as I call myself a wounded healer because I've travelled that path with my family and my brothers, and because there were 5 of us removed, and some haven't had the good outcomes that I've been lucky to have in life. I've got 14 grandchildren, 4 children, 14 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and the other thing, I've been married 53 years to the same person. I talk about in the book is that he married for better and I married for worse. I couldn't do any better, he couldn't do any worse. So there's all those things that feed into that. And I think with our mob, there's the sense that we mask our pain with humour. Sometimes the most awful moments in my life, I've had a smile on my face. And then at night when you bring the curtains down, that in the darkness you're sitting there and you've got all this stuff coming. That's what Adam, with his good intentions, which we hear that the road to hell is paved with 1,000 good intentions. So people start off with the right spirit in their heart to do this, but at night you're left there it's not a 9 to 5 job. When you're sitting there laying in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, all these memories are coming past, and who do you go to? And I don't think people have an understanding that when trauma comes, it doesn't come between 9 to 5. It happens when you're by yourself. And like Veronica has said, that can I call you Ronnie?
Ronnie.
Can I call you Ronnie?
Yeah.
Okay. So with Ronnie, with her, when she talked about the trauma and things like that, it's you don't go away. I used to be the person in my community that we'd have sorry day. So people would ring me up and say, "Can you come and do an address at the school or something?" After a while, it got like this thing that I was this performer coming out all the time. But when I talked for about 10 minutes, then I go home 3 days, I couldn't get out of bed. The trauma was just there all the time, so it was just dredging up. And that's what I was trying to say to Adam. When I saw these emails, that's my first discovery, when I saw these emails going backwards and forwards between Adam and Jane about, Mum would love this thing, she'd be up her alley.
And here she is, look, she's still...
No, I just wanted to share it with people.
And
to say, and then Jane sends back something, woohoo, we're looking forward to meeting her. Well, I said, woohoo, thank you, Adam, for telling me, like that. So I just want to let you know, people out there, that's the humorous side, and that's the stuff that he thinks I go on about it, but I want to just share that humour, that it just didn't happen with the click of a finger and things like that.
Yeah, and I think for me that's part of it, because if I didn't do it, she wouldn't. And so, and that wouldn't be, like the book wouldn't be, and there wouldn't be this wonderful record of the mum's voices, my uncle's voices, my aunt's voices, the women that you know, all of the voices. There's not just mum's voice in that book. That would be silent. And I think all of their lives would have passed into nothingness. That was my motivator, so I can deal with those moods and having, stuff hung on me all the time. But I think, Mum is a really great storyteller, and at the heart of it, that's been my motivation. And most of us know, apart from, Auntie Ronnie, he is killing it with the awards. There's no money in writing. There's nothing financially. It cost us, probably 10 times more to write that book and to research and travel than to actually physically pay. The worst part, the records Auntie Ronnie mentioned, you've got to pay full price to get them. So being able to, to access, all the records and the investment in that book, is 10 times more than the royalty that you get. And so that's a big disincentive, and I totally agree with you. It's like you took the words out of my mouth when you mentioned about fiction and non-fiction. You
Yeah,
know, to
and
me,
it's-
there's so many amazing, incredible stories out
Oh,
there. I just don't get.
yeah.
I just don't get the obsession with Indigenous fiction.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in as well. It's books like Annie Paddy's and Adams that should be winning awards. Yeah, so I hope you have someone that's nominating your book for awards as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
A question for all three of you. You know, it's writing and storytelling, when we share the most intimate and sacred experiences and moments of our lives, they are in fact a gift. And my grandmother used to say to me, your ancestors have given you more than trauma. You need to remember those things. And I think that by telling your stories and sharing your stories, you know, your words will live on longer than you ever will. And that is the gift. That which can often be somewhat healing, therapeutic. You find peace, you find solace in that. Have you found those things since the publications, since the time between then and now? Do you see your experiences as lessons, or do you see them with a different lens, a kinder lens?
No, I haven't. Not when when as a community we hear about deaths in custodies, we hear about verdicts of police having no accountability for the deaths of our people. When you still hear about people giving birth and their children's are being taken from the minute they're coming out. So it's still going on. People think this is history, like, and get over it. We can't get over it. It's still happening. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what I wrote about, I started writing 10 years ago, and 10 years ago, and 10 years later, it's still current. You know what I mean? Like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was this morning in a panel this morning, it was mentioned that the colony it's not history, it's current and it's ongoing. And you know, there is no past when it comes to the colony because it's still ongoing. We're still suffering, we're still having these experiences. What about you, Annie, Paddy and Adam?
Yeah, I think for me, that's Mum's story. So a lot of themes still resonate. I think we all know the devastating numbers of children in out-of-care placement. And I think Mum's got this really great line, which this sort of one of her turns of phrase around the fact that, you know, missions or settlements like Palm Island no longer exist. They've become prisons instead, so people are now sent to jail. Children are now put into out-of-care placement with foster care, and that, you know, women's shelters are now domestic violence shelters, that they've just morphed into something different. So for me, it was really, you know, quite illuminating and pretty awful to see no change and worsening in that. There's lots of things in the research of that book, like looking at Palm Island, it was a shock to me to learn that, you know, looking at the Uluru Statement from the Heart and even the notion of dedicated Aboriginal seats in Parliament, Kim Beazley, who's the current governor and the former politician, current governor of WA, his father was talking about dedicated seats, Aboriginal seats in Parliament in 1959, and how we just have this absolute lack of progress and our stats get worse, our conditions are worsening. But I think, you know, for me, it was more about, you know, capturing that and telling Mum's story. My hope, you know, when I do write my story and have my sort of version, I really hope that as an Indigenous author, that we can kind of depart from telling trauma stories. That wouldn't it be amazing if we just had these incredible stories of, you know, positivity and resilience while not forgetting where we've come from, but something wildly different and something wildly positive. That's, you know, speaking of hope, I think, which has been a bit of a theme this weekend, that's my absolute hope, is that through the pain and the trauma and that of the past, that's been my foundation. both from mum and my ancestors, and even understanding the stories of, how my grandmother grew up in a segregated environment and how my great-great-grandmother worked for the governor on Thursday Island scrubbing floors for pittance, those sorts of things. You can't forget where you come from, but it's through them, I've been able to be the person that I am today, and I feel the weight of that. It's really, apart from the marriage equality vote, it's not lost on me that I'm the first member of my family who was truly born free, out of segregation, out of an act, not having to, be forced into employment or these terrible situations. But until recently, I'm truly free to, be myself and to marry and to pick and choose and to have the life that I want, which, people like mum and ancestors and, generations before that never had.
Yeah, and like Grandad Victor went to fight for this country, and half the wage of the white Australians that fought came back, didn't get housing like everybody, the other. That history needs to be told. They talk about equity and equality. Well, that's the basis we have to start from, to say, well, we're carrying this. In the past, maybe the past, but because of all the tragedies that happened there, it becomes part of our future. It's the narrative of today that people, when we're asking to talk about reconciliation, that we've got to heal. As I say to myself, to Adam, I said, first we must restrain the anger in our heart before. You can't shake hands with a clenched fist. So in terms of listening to the young ones yesterday, I'm a moderate, and I look back and I think of all our forebears and local hero, 1935, William Cooper, that started the first NAIDOC advancement for Aboriginal people, Faith Bandler, Woodjaroo Noonuccal, all Charlie Perkins, all the forebears that came and carried the thing for human rights and advocating for us. They're no longer with us, so we've got to pick up the cudgel and we've got to carry it, and we've got to be the living example and building that thing. I call it hope, because I was a young kid on Palms and I had nothing but hope that things are going to get better. And the book was called The Question of Colour, because when you're a fair-skinned Aboriginal, you don't just get it from the white side, you get it from your own people. Coconut, uptown nigger, that you're somehow better than them. I haven't changed, it's just how people's opinions of you change, and you carry that burden with you until you run into somebody that helps you to have that self-belief, to believe in yourself that you are worthy of love. And that's, I think there's an absence of love, self-love for ourselves, because our circumstances are so dire that people think, in all that trauma that's in our communities, that they haven't got time to love themselves, so they go in, they take their lessons from somebody who's beating the hell out of them, and they use that, well, he belts me and breaks my arms and legs because he loves me. Well, that's an awful notion of what love is. So we come as to try and offer another side to the story. They want to be empowered. That's the empowerment of our people, to bring the messages. We've got billions of dollars being put into health and everything. We did more in the day with less when we marched and protested and things like that, and thank God for the people who went before us. We stand on their shoulders and we acknowledge their presence in our lives now, that we have made progress. It's been incremental, but we have to be patient and think, and it will come. The person will come out of wherever. That's I say, somebody will come to show the light. You look at the great speeches through times, the word again of Martin Luther King, and I think Australia, we lack that one leadership in this country. You think of all the great social struggles in the world. You see in India with Gandhi, you see Martin Luther King, you see South Africa, Tutu and Nelson Mandela. We haven't got that defined leadership. We had ATSIG, and that fell away because it turned, ATSIG was Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Commission. It turned to Aboriginal talking shit in Canberra. That's what it turned into, because the people had no faith. They lost their way about what the purpose of their... They were given this opportunity from their community. They were voted into a thing to do this, and they made a detour, and we lost the whole process. And now that one unified voice, is absent in this journey. I don't know, it's very much disciple. I call it the disciple principle. The word of the Lord has passed down through centuries because the disciples are there preaching. They're on the streets. I saw the mob there from India as I walked here today, handing out their placards. We've got to get mobilised. There's a revolution happening, not just in Russia at the moment, because in this compassion fatigue that's out there, Aboriginal issues are off the map. They're not even in the top 10. we talk about sovereignty, land rights, and that people just try to eke an everyday living in these communities. Then in Melbourne, when we talk up that way, they say they don't know. How many of them come up here to see how we're living? They talk about us without coming to see us, to understand our circumstances. They get all the views on TV, to sit down with them, to hear what their hopes and dreams. The hopes and dreams those people have are no different from what white fellas have. They want their kids to have a good education. They want housing. They don't want to be impoverished and being supported. We've got young people...
See, she on a roll now, baby. He's busted to get in.
Sorry, but that's it. So I'll get off the pulpit. But anyway...
I can see BB's like, I want to get in.
It's the lived experience. I walk the talk. I don't, no bullshit stuff, like that. This is it, and this is the challenge that goes out. I want people to have the life that I have, things like that, but, kind of have it on their terms, not because Patty Lee said it or something like that, to actually believe in the message, to have
I think your message, Annie Patty, is absolutely true, and it's really bold and it's clear. And I think when you mentioned the revolution, and you mentioned the challenge and the hope for the future, I think one of the really incredible things right now is the revolution is taking form in terms of books like this, storytelling like this, truth-telling around the country. With here in Victoria, with Treaty, with the York Justice Commission, there is truth-telling, and it's overdue and it's needed, but it is happening, and it is happening thanks to brave people like the three of you, who are telling your stories, who are writing them, who are sharing them for the future of history, and it's a really bold, brave thing. I'm so honoured and privileged to be on this stage with the three of you. I thank you so much. We are going to open up now for some questions in the audience.
Thank you. How bloody deadly and stirring it is to hear the three of you speak. I have a question for Adam. I obviously had a good yarn up with your mum yesterday. And I wanted to ask you about how you went about asking mum in the first place to tell the story, and then how you took care of her in those difficult times. I'm asking for a selfish reason. Obviously, I want to tell a story for my family, and my papa died 2 weeks ago, and my time's running out. I've got 2 people left, basically, to get that specific knowledge that comes from my family, and there's a lot of marbles leaving the building with them, and so I'm in a hurry, but I'm a young one in a hurry, and with respect to our elders, that you don't want to rush them, you want to look after them and take care. So I want to
be a bit controversial, because I think the foundation for me was looking at a lot of stuff Mum had written, often the compensation schemes, whether it's this, I think that Victoria or I think South Australia is rolling out a compensation scheme. There's been different compensation schemes that Mum's been eligible for, and it's required her to write out a whole life story. And so it was looking at all the records and the things that she'd ever submitted and done interviews for as part of the, I think the oral histories collection for the National Library, and doing that. And I thought, let's just start to, collate that. And I think in starting Mum's story, it wasn't so much about saying, Mum, can I do this? It was starting the process and trying to, bring her on board, because I knew if I'd asked her outright, we would never get anything going. And so it was important for me to start the process. I think, shout out to my family, and I think particularly, to my sisters who also picked up a lot of the burden. Dad, I just didn't have the capacity, and I think sometimes, I felt I was the author, the journalist, the researcher, the son. I struggled to be the psychologist and the counsellor. I couldn't do all that because there was just too much. And I was dealing with my own feelings of, being unemployed for the first time in my life, dealing with my own trauma, having been, forced to leave Tanzania, almost deported. So I was going through my own healing as well and putting that into the book. So I didn't actually do that thing and ask, can I please write your story? I just started doing it and, hoped that it would, Mum would come on. And at times we had stop and start. And I think now at the end, we can see it was really worth it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Adam. Do we have another question?
I've got a comment. Auntie Patty, I can listen to you all day.
I've been listening to him my whole life. You're welcome to take one. We have these stoushes. It's like, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, we're the Indigenous version, or Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander version of Mother and Son, Norman.
It's true, yeah. Maybe Nayuka can write about that.
There's a comedy skit there.
It's terrible.
It really has been an absolute pleasure to be in your presence, to hear your stories, to hear your responses, to share this space with you as you tell your stories. And I think that is the power of books and stories like these, is that these are your stories and they're your truths, and no one can take that from you. And it's those factors and those truths that make these absolute treasures. So thank you so much, Auntie Ronnie. Thank you, Adam. And thank you, Auntie Patty. Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks to the organisers and,
Thank you.
Jane, yeah.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Monique and Lenka had been incredible, and really showed a lot of care in taking care of Mum in particular. And I think the question in the previous session about Magabala, the same to them. They've just been tremendous throughout and showing a lot of care for Mum and care for the story, which I think a non-Indigenous publisher just wouldn't appreciate. So
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.